Baker Street is famous among tube nuts for being the first underground station, and I would imagine the people who bought a ticket on that first day were quite annoyed about having to wait for the second station to open. But for everyone else in the world, Baker Street is most famous for being the home of Sherlock Holmes, undoubtedly the world's most famous fictional detective. Even the station itself acknowledges this, with these silhouettes of Holmes himself on the Bakerloo platform, these images from the stories on the Jubilee platforms, and this larger-than-life statue of the detective himself outside. The character is instantly recognisable with his deerstalker hat and calabash pipe. Ironically, neither of these show up in the original stories. Holmes did smoke a pipe and famously referred to a difficult case as a three-pipe problem. He specifically smoked a briar, cherrywood, or clay pipe. There's no mention of the distinctive calabash, which was first used by the actor William Gillette in a stage adaptation of the stories, because he found it easier to say the lines with a lower bowl. Gillette also popularised the deerstalker, which had previously appeared in illustrations, but was never described in the text. It is worth noting that the deerstalker is a country hat, and a fashionable Victorian gent would no more wear it in town than he'd wear a pair of brown shoes. Actually, by the time Holmes first appeared, in the 1887 novel A Study in Scarlet, Baker Street Underground Station was already 24 years old, and Holmes would undoubtedly have been highly familiar with the line. It's only a short walk from 221B Baker Street, and here we come to another interesting aspect of the mythos. 221B Baker Street didn't exist. The street wasn't long enough to have a 221, let alone a 221B. Whether this was deliberate or whether Conan Doyle just made the address up out of thin air is one mystery even Holmes' most ardent devotees have never solved. It wasn't until the 1930s that the street was extended, and then Holmes faced his greatest challenge yet: fan mail. 221B was deluged with letters, posts from well-wishers, requests for answers to questions, a couple of marriage proposals, and even potential clients for Holmes' services, all poured in over the decades. Impressive, given that Holmes would have been well into his second century and, of course, doesn't exist. I'll tell you who did exist, though, and that's Abbey National. The banking firm inhabited Abbey House, the building on 215 to 229 Baker Street. So overloaded were they with fan mail that they actually employed a permanent secretary to deal with it all. However, 221B has been the subject of a minor turf war. These days, the official 221B is the Sherlock Holmes Museum, which is actually located at 239 Baker Street, or what should be 239, but since 1990 there has been a blue plaque announcing this as the great detective's home. There followed a three-way custody battle between the museum, Abbey National, and Westminster City Council. Abbey National and the museum both wanted to be the official address, and Westminster just wanted everyone to stop messing around and number their houses sensibly. Abbey National moved out in 2005, possibly after finding the word Raka painted on the wall, and since then the museum has been the semi-official 221B. While I'm here, I suppose I might as well talk about Sherlock. I mean, obviously, I've been talking about Sherlock, but I mean specifically the BBC children's programme starring Benedict Cumberbatch. Although set in the modern day, Cumberlock still lives at 221B Baker Street, but of course, that's not really something you can film in the real location. Baker Street is far too busy to be closed off for filming, and having the detective live in a museum dedicated to his own literary legacy would be too meta even for Stephen Moffat. If you want to see the actual filming location, you need to go a couple of stops up the line to Euston Square. Here, my powers of deduction led me to North Gower Street, where I took this shot, and then immediately left. Hello all. Hope you enjoyed this elementary episode of Tales from the Tube. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, to share, to subscribe, whatever takes your fancy. And I'll see you all again soon for another Tale from the Tube. Cheerio.